Councillor Conor Jordan, and I will be chairing this meeting. Can I please ask that your phones are switched to silent for those in the room for the duration of the meeting? I wish to remind members signing in remotely of the legal obligations to have their cameras switched on during the meeting. This is in order to be seen and heard while participating in council business. In addition, we're asked to raise your hand if members who are virtually viewing this meeting could raise your electronic hand, and for those members in the room, could you please raise your physical hand? Thank you. We not do a fire drill, so if we do have to leave the room, we'll try and endeavour to get back as quickly as possible. We do have apologies this afternoon from Councillors Thomas. I'd like to welcome Councillor Laura Williams as a reserve this afternoon. Welcome. Councillor Wood, we believe that you have to leave the meeting at 2 o'clock. This has been noted by officers. Much appreciated for letting us know. Thank you. Agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations of interest, please?
I see no indications, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Moving on to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. You will see the meetings attached at your agenda packs, pages 5 to 22. If you feel that these meetings minutes are an accurate record of the meeting, can I please have a proposer and a seconder? Proposed, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wolford. Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, thank you. So moving on to part 1 of agenda item 4A, which are innovation and continuous improvement programs. Again, pages 23 to 55 of your agenda packs. Officers, do you have anything further to add, please?
I can just briefly introduce the item, Chair. So the Innovation and Continuous Improvement Programme is a critical document in terms of how we move forward with taking a far more resilient and sustainable approach to delivering financial savings, but also innovation and transformation across the organisation. So here, not that long ago, presented the medium-term financial strategy, but we need to take a different approach to how we deliver efficiencies and savings over the next number of years. This document provides us with a framework for a programme aligned along 6 key themes. Clearly, the work that will underpin this will be critical in terms of the programmes and projects that we will be delivering over the next 5 years. The intention is to identify areas where we can transform and innovate the authority and how we deliver our services to the residents of Neath and Talbot, whilst looking at how we can do so at less cost, because that is the reality of the situation we face. But happy to take any questions, Chair.
Members, do you have any questions for officers, please? Councillor Percy, please.
Yeah, if there is, thank you. Yeah, a few questions, observations from me, really. This is quite a welcome document in terms of what it's aiming to do in terms of that transformational work. I think there's a lot of if we deliver on these ambitions in this document, we're going to be operating differently as a council. We're going to be carrying out different activity, aren't we? And in particular, things around income generation and looking at commercial opportunities, etc. I wanted to just perhaps ask the question around our understanding of the organisation's capacity to deliver on those elements. And I just to pull a few examples, if we're going to undertake more commercial leases or procurement activity, then our estates team, our legal team are going to need to be have the capacity to do that in a a timely and thorough way, aren't they? So but I'm sure there's going to be impacts, aren't there, about that changing way of working. So I'd be curious to what extent we've started to look at that to make sure we can really drive this forward and we're not going to be hampered by any bottlenecks. Chair, I'll ask my questions successively if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Percy.
Yeah, diolch, Cynghorydd Percy. Clearly, as an SLT, we've identified the need for us to put in some additional capacity, especially around areas such as programme management and project management. I think to expect officers to conduct and drive forward key projects of, if you like, their day job is a big ask. So we've identified that as an area where we need to improve and strengthen our capacity, ability in that space, so that we can ensure that we're managing these projects, ensuring delivery, having good governance around them. And in terms of what we will be working on now as a strategic leadership team and with officers, is identifying those projects that will underpin this programme of work. And it would be important, back to that issue on capacity, that we don't do this in our silos as directorates. So, key aspect of this document is to ensure that we work cross-directorate and identify projects that will have, if you like, the biggest bang for your buck in terms of effort and capacity. So, we can sweat the small stuff, and there's no harm in doing that. But ultimately, we've got to be really focusing on some really key cross-directorate projects that will deliver benefits for a number of service areas, but also the residents of Neath Talbot. So, we haven't yet scoped some of that work, Councillor Percy. It's part of the next phase, if you like, once this hopefully programme is approved. But certainly we will be keeping members informed and up to date in terms of how those projects evolve, what they will look like, the impact and outcomes we're expecting from those projects. That is certainly the next iteration of this piece of work.
Thank you, Norman. Councillor Percy, do you need to come back in?
Yes, please. Thank you for the response there. I appreciate there's still work to do as this develops. So you've reassured, I suppose. But with that, one of the things I wanted to just flag up further on in the document around workplace assets, and again, you mentioned about silos there, and I think it is really important, isn't it, that when we're looking at our buildings and assets, that we consider not just individual departments, but also the overall themes in our corporate strategy and aims of the council, and members and officers will know that I've perhaps expressed some frustration, perhaps of how we've dealt with heritage buildings in the past that we've owned. I just wanted to kind of flag that in the sense of disposal of assets can sometimes be an easy option, but maybe one that can produce more issues down the line. So it was just me. I wanted to make that point in this context, given that this strategy may accelerate or push forward asset disposal. And I just think ensuring that we've considered the impact of losing heritage assets or significant buildings in a community is considered before we perhaps dispose of a building, and maybe consider those other impacts that maybe the council's going to have to pick up. That's just a point. So I'll just pick up on one last point, which is about the service-led transformation piece. And again, I think this is really important. And one thing that always strikes me is the really useful feedback we get from frontline members of staff. And I certainly had that as a local member, going out and speaking to frontline members of staff. What are we thinking of putting in place to make sure we can capture that, to drive some of that transformation work? Because I know there'll be an inconsistency in how that feedback works across the organisation. We've got such a wide variety of teams and specialisms. It's a very different environment in social services team to pick out an operating efficiency as it is in street care or somewhere else. And it strikes me that if we're going to do a piece of work around transformation and efficiency, that trying to standardize across the organisation how we get that feedback from our frontline staff, and thinking about perhaps what the barriers might be, and an example being somebody might not be comfortable speaking to their line manager or immediate manager about something that they may feel that member of staff is contributing towards that inefficiency or that difficult way of working. And sometimes it needs to be a process in place, doesn't there, to empower staff to give feedback. And I just wanted to perhaps put that out there in this context, because I just know from my own experience it's really valuable for that service transformation, and also that doing better with this perhaps the same resource, that we're all often trying to deliver, aren't we? So I wonder how we consider that. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Now I was going to come back into you.
Yeah, diolch am y cwestiwn, Cynghorydd Percy. So, yeah, I think nothing will succeed unless we bring the whole organisation with us on this journey. And it's very easy for us to draft a kind of innovation and continuous improvement programme. But what we have done in just simply drafting this programme is we've engaged our senior leadership network. So we had 3 or 4 virtual workshops. We had over 80 members of staff engaged with what the document itself looks like. But clearly, the proof of the pudding will be in how we go about engaging them with the rest of the workforce. And further on the agenda today, you've got the communications and marketing review, and there are a number of, I think, 56 recommendations of that on how we can engage and involve not just the residents of Neath Talbot, but our staff as well, better in how we approach some of our innovation and transformation projects. What we will ensure is that whenever we begin on these cross-directorate projects, is that we do engage with the entire workforce, and we will have a number of avenues available to us in terms of how we do that, what it looks like on the ground. And we will be going out in the beginning of March now for the new head of communications and customer experience. So that individual, that team will shape how we engage with the workforce in a better, more informed manner. So for me, it's going to be critical. It's going to be critical when we hear the voice of every single member of staff. At the end of the day, they are the ones delivering the service at the coalface. And I never pretend to know all the answers, and certainly neither do the senior managers. So if we don't engage with them, we'll end up developing a solution that it doesn't fit the problem. So I can give you assurances that we will use all the avenues available to us as managers to engage with our staff across the workforce, whether they are office-based staff or whether they are our traditional frontline staff as well. That comes up, Percy.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're happy with the response, Councillor Percy?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy to.
Members, any further questions? Councillor Patterson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to bear in mind as well, we're not the only organisation trying to do this. Every public organisation is trying to do what we are proposing to do. I was on the Fire Authority when the Rescue 365 innovation came forward. One of the things that seemed to me to have been the problem with it was that people who have worked in public service for most of their career have got a public service way of thinking rather than an outside world way of thinking. And it's very difficult, with all the goodwill in the world, to do this type of thing if the people you are dealing with are of that condition. I think they're conditioned to think of like public service ways of doing, even public service speaking. You see in reports, it's the way our reports are written. It's very different from other places. So I just wanted to highlight that whoever you get to help out needs to have that outside way of looking at things as well as inside. Because if you've come up through the ranks, it's very difficult to unlearn what you've already learned. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want to come back in? Yeah.
No, thank you, Councillor Patterson. I think that's a very valid point. We do engage with external partners, clearly, in terms of a lot of the areas of work we undertake as a local authority. We also, when we feel it's relevant, we bring external consultants in to assist us with some pieces of work, as you will know, and there's an item on the agenda later on, where we wouldn't have had the capacity, and bringing in an external consultant to assist us with that piece of work gave us a different pair of eyes, if you like, on the organisation. So there are benefits in engaging, learning from best practice outside of the public sector. And you are right. I think every local authority has something similar to this document in place. It's called different things. In Conwy, when I was the other day, it was called a resilience strategy. It's called a transformation strategy in other organisations. But we are all on this journey. Some of us are in different places than others. And I think, for us as Neath Talbot, there will have been, and there are, so we are not starting from scratch. Neath Talbot Council, there are a number of very innovative and transformative projects already underway. You will have heard some of them recently from Chalet around housing, what we do there on temporary accommodation, and the approach will be taken on other key areas within housing, with Angela in adult services as well. There are already transformational projects happening within the authority. So although this document is new, and we're trying to create a bit of a roadmap moving forward, there is a lot already happening. But I do agree, bringing in some external eyes sometimes outside of the public sector can help, which is what we did with the communications and customer experience piece of work as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Norbert. Councillor Patterson, happy with it?
Yes, thank you. I just making a comment.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Bob Woolford next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back to the workforce, obviously our workforce as an authority is probably our biggest asset. I'm just looking at the section on that. The question I wanted to ask is, how often, with the change in platform that we've got all the time, are the job descriptions updated and reviewed? Because a lot of the contact we get with residents often focuses on, why isn't that person doing that? Why isn't this person doing this? So that we have an updated job description for all these frontline people, and we can answer those questions.
Usually job descriptions should be updated every year with the performance appraisal, if it's required to be updated. So that's one way where we ensure that the job descriptions and person specifications are up to date. Another way is that if the job has changed significantly or substantially, well then the line manager and the head of service would approve the change to the job description, and that would go through the job evaluation process as well. So we do up to 200 a year of different job evaluations. So I would say that the majority of job descriptions have been amended since we implemented job evaluation in 2008. But as things change, the job descriptions are amended. So, but at least annually.
Thank you. Is that information available to members on a database so that we can see what the job descriptions are? Or
we've got the job descriptions. They're not on a database because the job descriptions are management documents. So it depends which ones you want to see, and we could get the information from the relevant managers.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was somewhere as members that we could just key in on our members kind of thing and say that is what that person should be doing or shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, we haven't got a database as such, yeah.
You open it up in us?
Yeah, maybe it's something we could look at in the future. I don't know if that's possible.
Wonderful. Members, any further questions for officers, please? There's none in the room, none online. So members, the recommendation is on page 24 of the agenda pack. I'm happy to propose, can I have a seconder, please?
A second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilford. Can members indicate if they wish to abstain, please?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I don't see any indications of the contrary, Chair, so the recommendation is supported.
Thank you, Alison. Members, now moving on to agenda item 4B, which is the complaints and compliments policy. These can be found on pages 57 to pages 100 of the agenda pack. Officers, do you have anything further to add, please?
Thank you, Chair. Quickly introduce the item. So last year I engaged with Steph Payne in our internal audit review team and asked her to undertake a review of where the Empty Council was with regards to its complaints and compliments policy and our adherence to it. That was based on our complaints figures being incredibly low compared to comparative local authorities. The thorough report was undertaken, 8 recommendations came forward. One of those key recommendations was that we revised our complaints and compliments policy, which is what last looked at in 2021. That is what you have before you today, members. And happy to take any questions, Joe.
Members, do you have questions, please? We got Councillor Bowen first. Then I'll go to Councillor Wilford in the room and then come to you, Councillor Percy. Is that okay? So, Councillor Bowen first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions to ask the officer, please. I'm finding at the moment that I'm getting more residents coming to me to put the complaints in. Can you tell us what happens to the complaints when they come from ward members? Do they just stay with the relevant officers, or are these passed on to the complaints department? Also, a second question is, I'm also finding that I'm getting residents coming to me to say they put complaints in online. They're getting emails back then to say that the case has been closed, but the work hasn't been done. Can you give me answers on that, please?
We will pick up first question, Chair.
The first question, Chair. So if a member raises a complaint or compliment on behalf of a resident, it is processed in accordance with the complaints and compliments policy. The member may make the initial contact for all correspondence, and responses then are sent directly to the resident. And officers then in the relevant service will follow the policy's procedure, ensuring the case is recorded and responded to appropriately. And these figures then are included in our quarterly performance monitoring. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louise. Okay, Councillor Bowen, we're going to go to Nolwenn now. Thank you.
Just to continue with your question, Councillor Bowen, we've identified and recognised as officers that we do need to strengthen our approach to how we handle complaints and compliments. There's, as part of those 8 recommendations, we've acknowledged, that there's a lot of work to do to ensure that we do have a consistency of approach across the whole organisation with regards to how we manage and record and handle complaints. So, I think there's, in terms of the recommendations, there's a good action plan in place behind those recommendations to ensure that we can strengthen the approach we're taking. I think some of you at the modernisation group the other day had sight of the council and my MPT as well, and that will certainly, in my view, assist elected members when they log complaints either on behalf of residents or on behalf of yourselves as members. It will allow you to have a tracking mechanism for those complaints, so that you will be able to see when they are being dealt with and what the responses were in terms of how they were closed. So again, I think we've got a member seminar penciled in after the post-election period. I don't know if we've got a date, Louise?
We haven't got a date.
We haven't yet got a date. That will be penciled in once the Senate elections have been, and that would give members a good oversight of that councillor portal for my NPT. In terms of complaints that are logged on behalf of residents, again, there is work to be done to ensure we got consistency across the board in terms of how those are closed and how that is fed back to residents. And again, if they log their complaints via my NPT, the intention is that we do close the loop on those complaints. So members or residents get an understanding of how that complaint was closed. And if that answers your question, Councillor Bowen.
Yes, thank you, Nolwenn. It's just a few of them I've had now that they're getting emails to say the jobs have been done, and when I've gone up there myself, the jobs haven't been done. They're still open, but they've been closed down on our system. And it's not just complaints I put in; we do put compliments in as well. So I'm hoping they are passed on as well. It's not just complaints we get of residents.
But thank you, Councillor Bowen. Nolwenn's going to come back in on that.
I think if you can maybe take that conversation offline, Councillor Bowen, you give me some exact examples of where that's happening. We can certainly follow those up for you. I do think it does come back to that educating of staff as well in terms of how we respond back to some of these complaints that are logged. So it does come back to us raising the importance of handling these in a timely and proper manner, Councillor Bowen. But we can certainly happy to look further into that for you offline.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Wolford next, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually in line with what you were just saying. My question was around my MPT app. I'm certainly promoting it with all my residents. I just wondered if we have kind of any data how well it's working, and if it is the subscription to it is growing and it is working for us. Yeah.
I'll hand over to Ian Vaughan from Digital Services, Chair.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, so we have a marketing campaign currently underway, working with the communications and marketing team. So as of yesterday, it was 8,900.
9,000.
It is 9,000 now. There is steady growth. As I mentioned in the members' seminar recently, when new services come on, we expect that to spike. So there is continued growth. In terms from a data perspective, we have far better data now in terms of a resident perspective and from an officer perspective that we didn't have before. So it's twofold.
Great, good. Thank you.
Okay, response.
Yeah.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the response, Ian. Councillor Percy next then, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to come in briefly on the previous points that have been raised, and perhaps I'll pick this up with you as well, Niall, when around my MPT cases, because it's definitely a bit of a widespread issue. I'm having several coming to me on a regular basis where jobs are being closed and they've not actually been carried out yet. So I think that is something we should pick up, particularly as more residents sign up. But coming on to the complaints policy itself, again, this one is very welcome. This is a lot more in line with what particularly private sector organisations do in terms of their complaints policies. Again, this is something I know we've raised in scrutiny previously. Around this, it's just, how we implement this consistently is going to be challenging. Some of those examples that have been given around officers taking correspondence perhaps from members, if it meets that criteria, then they are going to have to log that as a complaint, aren't they? And it's going to be quite an undertaking to train all of our staff in that, because of course we'll have to deal with our customer service staff in one sense, and then all of our service areas who might be interacting with or receiving that correspondence as well. But I think if we do get that right, it becomes a valuable data set then, doesn't it, about where we need to make improvements and where we need to make tweaks to services. So I certainly welcome it, but I think we shouldn't underestimate the scale of the challenge in implementing this in the spirit in which it's meant to be implemented. You don't need to use the complaint word, the C word, to register a complaint. And I mean, of course, the policy outlines that, but actually implementing that consistently, I think, is going to be a challenge. And I'd welcome any thoughts on how we're going to disseminate that across the organisation and try and monitor it, because you mentioned our levels were a lot lower than other councils. So I'm presuming we're going to try and track our increase to what is maybe the expected level.
Percy. So a couple of things there really for me to respond on. Firstly, I am linking in with Craig Griffiths to see and scope what we put in place in terms of more of a central triage, because at the moment, when complaints and compliments come through, they go straight to kind of the service areas. So we don't have necessarily that corporate oversight, apart from when we ask for stats each quarter to report upon. So I will be looking at putting a slightly maybe alternative model in place, certainly having one for consideration, whereby we have some kind of central triaging before those go back to the service area. That's something we need to put some capacity in against the route we take. I do think that will strengthen our corporate oversight and ensure that we've got better consistency in terms of how we handle and what we do handle in terms of complaints, and that ever ongoing discussion about what is a complaint and what is a service request is one that'll go on forever and a day. But we do need to kind of bottom that out, and maybe putting that central team in place will assist in that. You mentioned in terms of it being an important data set, and you'll be aware of the approach we're now taking in terms of how we report on our authority's performance. So we try to move away from just having that report on the performance of and delivery of the corporate strategy. We're now taking a far more holistic approach, and you will have seen that in the last quarter, whereby we're bringing in various data sets to form a bigger picture in terms of performance. One of those data sets is our complaints and compliments data. So that'll form part of that more holistic approach we're taking as a council towards our performance. But it's an important data set in terms of compliments and complaints, because it identifies particular service areas where we need to strengthen and improve and do things differently as well. So it's an important data set to assist us in our learning and what we can do differently. And moving forward, that'll be, again, a key piece of work. But I don't think anybody's underestimating the challenges ahead, Councillor Percy. But it's a bit like eating an elephant. We take bite-sized pieces out of it as we move along. And eventually we will see improvements, I'm sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Norman. Councillor Percy, can see you raise your hand to come back in when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the challenge perhaps I'm seeing is, I think there is one thing around how we deal with, complaints that come in that we know are complaints, right? So someone's filling out the complaint form. It's a lot more straightforward to filter out service requests or things that don't meet the policy that come in that direction. I think the bigger challenge is if someone is emailing a council department, is ensuring that the officer receiving that email or receiving that maybe direct correspondence is understanding that that is a complaint and not a service request, and then them logging it. And I think that's probably the bigger challenge we've got to get accurate data is that approach. And I think that's that is going to be the challenge. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor Percy. We got Councillor Richards next, and then Councillor Reynolds in the room. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. So just following on from the previous item, actually, how does this complaints and compliments policy link into the council's wider innovation and continuous improvement programme to ensure that feedback directly informs transformation priorities?
Diolch yn fawr, Richards, am y cwestiwn. Clearly, you have noticed within the Innovation and Continuous Improvement Programme, we've got the theme customer experience. And clearly that theme feeds through absolutely everything we do as a local authority. So, again, that element of resident feedback, of complaints and compliments would feed into, some of those projects that we'll be moving on with over the coming years. For me, it's about how we improve that customer journey. Regardless of what service area the resident wishes to engage with, they get the same customer experience, the same customer journey. So, this policy is aimed at strengthening the way and strengthening the approach we take to that overall customer experience. Right? It does link in quite closely with that Innovation and Continuous Improvement Programme.
Yeah. Okay, if I could just come back. So, how are you going to sort of build the complaint theme analysis into the innovation programs, whether or not that's a performance dashboard, how are reoccurring themes going to be reviewed by the program board that can potentially trigger some targeted service reviews? What sort of work is being done to connect that together?
So I think we've already begun that work in terms of improved analysis of the compliments and complaints data. The Quarter 2 report that came before members not that long ago demonstrated that we were looking at that data. So we're trying to have a better corporate oversight of what's being reported, what's being addressed by services as well. So again, I mentioned in my response to Councillor Percy, it is an important data set in terms of how we learn and improve services moving forward. So, we already, like I said, began that analysis process of the data itself. What we've got to ensure is that we get good, rich data coming through from that process or from that policy. Maybe that's what's been lacking in the past. So that's the area we're looking to strengthen as well with this policy, Councillor Richards, is improving the quality and depth of the data so we can undertake better analysis of it, and then that feeds into a learning programme for change.
Thank you, Norman. Councillor Richards, do you need to come back in?
No, it'll be just interesting to see how things progress, and there may be further questions as this progresses. But diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. Councillor Reynolds next, then, please.
Thank you. Just to comment on that last interaction, or the last interactions, you know, as someone who, on behalf of an external agency, on behalf of a resident, has had to fight to get a complaint recognised and to get a response to that agency, I think it is, you know, going to be quite a challenge to make sure that those things go forward, and I'll look forward to seeing that happen. I wanted to just get some clarification, Norman, about my MPT councillor version. You referred to it there. You know, we had an opportunity, some of us, to have a brief preview of that, and were quite excited about it. And you know, the question I have is, you said there will be a seminar after the pre-election period. Why after the pre-election period? Surely, you know, an internal mechanism is not impacted by that. And, you know, I think the view from all of us was the sooner the better.
That's a fair point, Councillor Reynolds. It's probably something we are looking at, looking back to in terms of the date. You're right, it probably doesn't need to be pre-elections, internal operational things. So, yeah, apologies for that. But certainly, as soon as we can get data to the diary themselves as members, we put that in as a seminar. It doesn't need to be impacted by the pre-election period, as far as I'm aware.
Excellent, thank you. I think that will really help as councillors. It will make things so much more easy to keep a track of and work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson, do you want to come?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, please. I think it's worth mentioning that although we can get lots of data from my MPT, and the more people that start using it, the better. Obviously, you get a fuller range of what's going on outside the council. There's always that element of the information that is gleaned from that is only as good as some sort of programme to find out what it is that you want from it. So I don't think we should lose sight, and maybe it's at a senior level, that human eyes actually look over things and say, well, that's not, no, that didn't come through the right way. It's all, I don't understand programming and things like that. It's way above my intelligence level, but it just seems like if we leave it all to sort of data, that you might get the wrong answer, not the right one. Beg your pardon. Perhaps I'm not explaining it very well.
So if I come back on that question, Councillor Patterson, I think really, you know, we have a wealth of data, don't we, as an organisation, and we're continuing to gather that data from various sources. So, you know, that hard and fast data is important. It's important to be analysed it properly, but we also undertake staff surveys, resident surveys, and again, you might argue, well, that's also data sets. But we've got yourselves as councillors who feed into that understanding as well. So, you know, the more equipped we become in terms of gathering that holistic set of data, the more informed decisions we'll be able to make. I think it's important that we don't focus on just one voice or one set of data, and that we have a breadth of data giving us the complete picture, if you like. So yes, some of that has to be hard and fast stats and what have you else, but others will be just that cognitive input from members of the public, which we do via various resident surveys and forums, etc. So, you know, we've also got a citizens panel, which we are certainly, we certainly do need to engage more with the citizens panel, and part of the recommendations from the piece of work undertaken by Westco was that, you know, we're not very good at that at the moment. We've got it, but we're not necessarily tapping into it as much as we could. So again, that'll give us that rich voice from the public as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Branson. Thank you, Noreen. Members, the recommendation is on page 58 of your agenda pack. I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walford. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
There's no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported. Thank you.
I see no indications, Chair, so I can confirm the recommendation is supported.
Thank you, Alison. Moving on to part 2, agenda item 5A, which is the communications and marketing review, customer services review, pages 101 to 215 on the agenda pack. Officers, do you have anything further to add, please?
Very briefly, then just give a bit of context around this piece of work. Again, so something I looked at commissioning 12 months ago now. It's a comprehensive piece of work undertaken by Westco, who we brought in back to Council Patton's question about having an external pair of eyes and assist us with this piece of work. Extensive engagement undertaken as part of the review, and there were 56 recommendations that came out of that piece of work. We haven't stood still, and Hannah will still be assured, because we've been working on a number of those recommendations already. One of the key recommendations or observations from the review was that we didn't have it at enough of a senior level with regards to communications, and it's one of the areas that led to myself putting in place a revised structure. So we are going out in March ahead of customer experience and communications. I think that elevates the importance of listening to customer experiences and getting the communications right, both internally and externally as a council. So with that, Jay, if you're okay, I'll hand over to Sylvia to give a bit more of an insight in terms of some of the things that have been going on. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Jay. Just to give a little bit more context to it, and Councillor Patterson, you've alluded to it in an earlier question and comment, is the ultimate goal of this work is to improve customer experience. That is the long-term goal, and that is a big undertaking, as you already mentioned on, because customer experience is all contact points, all touch points of all our customers across our services. So the communications and marketing review and a very light touch element of customer services review is the starting point for that. And when you think about complaints, it was prior to Neumann agreeing to doing this work, it sits in this governance box, collecting complaints, making sure we're collecting them correctly. But what happens with them is the question, and how do we make sure that leads to service improvement so we don't get more complaints? When you think about the private sector, a complaint is not a negative thing. It's free market research to them. So, which is why you still find companies putting 0800 numbers on products, because they want people to tell them if they're going wrong, so they don't purchase from the competition. So all this is parts of a bigger picture that hopefully eventually will build up to improving all that work. So in the report, you've seen quite a few things that we've already started to implement on the recommendations. Obviously, it's going to be a long way to go, but obviously the head of service, head of customer experience and communications recruitment is the key to it all, to elevate this into this strategic function that it needs to be to improve this going forward. We've made some inroads with some of the quick to implement things, recommendations, both in communications and in customer services area. And of course, we're working with our digital services colleagues to improve that end of things. But when you're talking about customer experience, you can have the best digital experience that you want, and I'm sure it is. You're getting there. But customer experience often is around the human interaction. It's what you see out in the street, how our waste people behave, the letters we write, the answers we give people, how we speak to people. So it's very big, but this is the starting point for this all.
Thank you, Sylvia. Members, do you have any questions, please? I can see Councillor Bowen's on screen and Councillor Reynolds in the room. Councillor Bowen, we go to you first then. You're on mute, Tim.
Right, sorry, Chair. Can I just ask then, if a number of complaints are put in about contractors or so forth, and these complaints are coming in on a regular basis, does this get escalated then, and then we sort of go, right, what's happening here? We really need to do something about this, because we've been having mega problems, as the Chair knows, in the last couple of months with a certain contractor, and we don't seem to be getting anywhere with the complaints. Thank you,
Councillor Bowen, for your question. Yeah, I can totally agree with you on that. The last 2 evenings we've had with contractors, but Norman, do you want to come in?
I think that's a very specific question, Councillor Bowen. Obviously, you have an ongoing concern there, which would probably be best taken outside of the meeting, like I said earlier, we can follow that up directly with you and get you some answers on that, Councillor Bowen.
Okay, perhaps you could have me on the chair on that one then.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reynolds next, please.
Thank you. I wanted to ask first off whether or not, because I might have missed it, whether there was, consultation with members on this. We're looking at what's saying, a one council approach. It's quite clear in this that there was a one member, one council approach going forward. But, I don't remember having any consultation or any communication about this at all. And the recommendations don't mention communication with members. It's, senior management team, cabinet, leadership, great. But, repeatedly recently, we've had communications coming out from the council which members weren't aware of. And when you get your residents coming to you and saying, what about this? What do you know? And you go, what? Where was that? Because you haven't been told. It's, it's problematic. So where do members come into this activity?
Do you mean when we post social media information or press releases? Yeah. Well, the process that is followed there is that they are signed off by officers and members who are affected or who are quoted. And I'm not sure how we, as in the communications team, can do that, other than officers need to follow a protocol to liaise with local members if there is an impact in their ward.
It's not happening.
Again, I think, you notice from the 56 recommendations, we've identified that there are areas we need to strengthen on in terms of how we do this. That's why we undertook the report. We were conscious that there were significant areas that we did need to improve in terms of how we communicated, both I think with yourselves as members, with the residents, and with staff as well. So, a number of the recommendations will address those points moving forward. I think there is, and as with the complaints policy, there's need to ensure you've got a consistent approach across the authority with everybody understanding the protocols of who needs to be informed when and why. I think there's more to it than just signing off the press release. I think it's more about ensuring that local ward members might potentially be impacted by some of that news, some of that communications are also informed. That is part of why we've put this post in place and why we are looking to strengthen our approach in this area, Councillor.
Yeah, I just, my concern as well is that there has been an extensive consultation. Where were members in that consultation? Were members consulted? Did I miss something?
Thank you, Councillor. Have we got somebody wants to come back in on that?
Do you mean with extensive consultation with this? There was no formal consultation in developing this. It was internal work groups and workshops. I do understand what you're saying, and what I'd like to add to what Norman has already said is that talking about communications is not just the job of the communications team. And what this report and this research has shown is that we need to strengthen communications across the board so that those areas are strengthened, so that, communications happens everywhere. It's not just the corporate communications team that needs to do the communications. You're quite right.
Okay.
Have I got this wrong? We paid a company to do this consultation. Was it not in the specification?
I need to check, Councillor Reynolds, in terms of there was significant engagement and taken 12 months ago now. So we've got a full list of exactly who Westco did engage with. I know there were a number of workshops held, a number of discussions undertaken, and I will review that to see and make sure that members were involved or not.
So, if I may, this is one of the reasons why I regularly ask, where was this scrutinised? Where did it come to, when we were looking to do this work? Did anybody say this work is going forward? And, was there any ability to discuss? We put out a specification and consultants adhere to that specification. So getting the specification right is crucial. And I think something which affects a council like this really needs to be thought through. And if it's been agreed that this is going ahead, then, it's my concern is that, we miss something. And in this, there's not a mention of member discussion or member involvement or communication with members.
Thank you, John.
But I would point out this is the first hearing this document has had in public, in effect, at scrutiny. So, this is the start of a 10 on this piece of work, for want of a better word. It was a review that was undertaken. There was a review that was undertaken, and there were 56 recommendations that have come out of it. And those recommendations, like I say, we are putting the capacity in place with this new head of service coming in. And this would be an iterative process because 12 months is a long time. Things have changed in the last 12 months since this report work began. So this isn't the end of the line, and these recommendations will change. They will evolve, and there will be things that we have not included that will get included as we move this forward, as we develop some of our responses and action plans to underpin these recommendations. So what I would say, if elected members feel that the review and the recommendations aren't hitting everything that they would expect them to. That's why this is coming in front of you today, to be scrutinised, to ask the questions that you are asking, to identify to officers that you feel it might not be addressing everything that you were hoping it was addressed. And that's fine. That's why this report has come today to scrutiny, so that we can have that discussion and take your views on moving forward and engage further with you down the line. Because like I said, we will be going out to advert in March, hopefully we'll appoint in May, and once that new head of service is in place, the team is in place with that service area, then we would really get a grip of some of these recommendations, and there would be further involvement with yourselves as elected members. So this report isn't the fait accompli. It was a review. It gave us a good insight into where we are, what we needed to do, but we understand and appreciate there's a lot more work to be done, and part of that would be clearly ensuring that members' views are taken on board. That's why it's come here to scrutiny, for you to ask those questions.
I look forward to updates.
Oh, good. Can I bring Cyril in as well on this topic? Thank you.
Yeah, no, just what Norman said, this is not a complete process. The review, although the review is completed, we haven't really properly started on recommendations yet. So this is not a finished thing at all. We sort of, have implemented some of the recommendations, which are quick wins, simple things, procedural things for the communications team ourselves. We haven't got yet to the big recommendations, which is we will tackle when the head of service starts.
Thank you, Sue. Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in. My screen has gone off. Just one sec. Okay, it's on page 66, paragraph 2. In order to populate the service of head of service, a certain amount of jiggling has gone around with people employed, moving them from position, and also mentions unions. Now, was there a little bit of disquiet with staff? Is that why unions were involved, or can somebody explain?
Just from a HR perspective, if there's any change initiative that goes on in the council, whether it affects redundancies, job losses, anything, a management of change in partnership policy always requires us to consult with the trade unions as well as the employees.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right. So the budget for this, and I won't ask specifics because we're not in, private, we shouldn't be doing things like that in a public session, but the budget for it, was it in addition to the budget that you had before, or was it just rejiggling? And yeah, okay.
I'd answer Councillor Patton's question because
he nodded.
She can see me nodding, but we not everyone nodding. Yes, there was no additional monies requested for this structure that we put in place. We've been able to undertake some work with the team. And therefore we were able to fund the post of head customer experience and communications from our current revenue allocation.
Okay, thank you, Chair, but I think I will contact officer in HR to sort of go further with this.
Thank you, Councillor Percy's apologies, keep your eye neck, and you're ready when you are, please.
Yeah, dim problem. There's been a lot of conversation. Yeah, I think I'm just picking up on the comms with members point. I mean, it is difficult, isn't it? There's a lot of layers and of bureaucracy to go through in the council, and then you've got members to contend with as well. So I understand the challenge sometimes, and you know what I will say is, of course, you know, over the last few years, and you know, the role of members has changed, isn't it? And particularly with social media, we're all playing a much more active role in communicating with residents, you know, in ways that perhaps we didn't previously. So I think it is important, isn't it, to factor that in. And I certainly know from my experience, you know, I worked in comms, so it's something that I take an interest in, and you know, where I can, I do try and see communications that's going out in my ward or in schemes in my ward, but I usually have to intervene to make sure that happens. So I think there is definitely a piece of work there, which I think has been picked up in other forums around officer member, you know, protocols and such. I'm sure other members have mentioned this to me, but I'm sure that can be dealt with. Just in terms of the review that's in front of us, I think it is a very good piece of work. I think you know, we've seen you know, mixed work from consultants over the years, but this is a very thorough and very helpful document as far as I'm concerned. In terms of the recommendations that are put forward, I appreciate might not be able to have an answer verbally today given the extent of them, but I think it'd be useful for members to understand what recommendations we plan on taking forward and we agree with, what recommendations we might disagree with, and whether there's any additional recommendations that we have come up with, you know, since this work was put together. So I think that'll be very useful for us to understand what is going to be taken forward and what isn't. Diolch.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Now who's going to come in?
Yeah, diolch, Councillor Percy. We can certainly ensure that we bring that piece of work back to yourselves as members. We'll also, you know, keep you up to date with regards to the progress we're making against those recommendations. And as I mentioned to Councillor Sumner Reynolds earlier, you know, if there are areas that are not addressed within some of those recommendations, then we can certainly take those on board as well. Ultimately, you know, we are here to work with yourselves as members to improve that customer experience in whatever guise that looks like. And you know, I think what you've seen here this afternoon are a number of key documents that kind of show what we're doing to change things and move things in the right direction on customer experience, whether it's the Innovation Continuous Improvement Programme, our complaints policy, the customer services review, etc. They're all taking us in one direction. That's to improve the quality of the services we provide to our residents. And again, I can bring those updates back to you, and we will be engaging further with yourselves as elected members to ensure, you know, if not all the recommendations are taken forward, we'll keep you informed which ones are and which ones will have dropped off and other ones will have taken their place. Councillor Percy.
Thank you. Are you okay with the response, Councillor Percy?
Yeah, best, yeah.
Thank you. Can't see any further questions in the room or online, so members are going to ask you to note the report. Thank you. Moving on to part 3, which is then agenda item 6A. It's the pay policy statement, pages 217 to 268 on your agenda packs. Officers, do anything further to add, please?
Nothing further to add to the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions, please? It's not online and then in the room. So members, again, I'm going to ask you to note the report. We're on to agenda item 6B, which is the gender pay gap report, which is pages 269 to 277 on the agenda packs. Officers, again, do you have anything further to add, please?
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any members' questions, please? None in the room. There's none online. Again, members, I'm going to ask you to note the report. Thank you. We're on to agenda item 6C, which is the social partnership duty annual report, pages 279 to 284. Again, in your agenda packs. Officers, anything further to add, please?
Nothing further to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for officers? Again, there's nothing online, none in the room. So members, again, I'm going to ask you to note the report. So we're on to agenda item 6D, which is the cost of living update report, pages 285 to 328 of the agenda packs. Members, apologies, officers, do I refer to that, please?
I believe we've got a presentation on this item issued as a second.
Thank you, Alison.
And Betty understands.
Victoria's been given a presentation. Nolan, do you need to come in before?
Yeah, just as Victoria's getting herself ready to present. This is a significant piece of work. It's the second time we produced this report. You'll have seen one approximately this time last year. And I think there's a lot of work gone into putting the report together, but there's a phenomenal amount of work that takes place across the authority, in all directors in terms of how we try to support that kind of cost of living poverty prevention. And, I co-chair the cost of living poverty prevention steering group, which is linked into the public service boards. Councillor Lloyd is a member on that as well. But what this report does is articulates the impact that work does. Sometimes, as an authority, it's sometimes difficult to articulate the actual impact we have when we undertake pieces of work. But I think this report manages to capture a lot of that impact, which Victoria is now going to take you through, Chair.
Thank you, Noreen. Victoria, down to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the presentation is going to pull out some of the key highlights of the report, which we've pulled together to showcase the wide range of actions that the council is taking to support our residents who are still impacted by the ongoing cost of living crisis. So just looking at some of the key headlines, what difference have we made? So through our targeted data-led campaign using the Low Income Family Tracker, our pension credit campaign has now resulted in just over £1 million of annual pension credit claimed by residents across Neath and Talbot. Income maximisation work delivered by our Welfare Rights Service, who in 2024-2025 generated over £12 million of additional income for residents. And the Council's Food and Fund provision for summer 2025, which was the largest in Wales. So looking at the Low Income Family Tracker, which you may hear us refer to as LIFT, this has been a core tool in the poverty prevention work that we've undertaken. It enables us to use data to proactively identify households who might be missing out on financial support. We've used it to run a pension credit campaign, and since its launch in January 2024, with the latest update I've now had, it is over £1 million of pension credit. Of the households that we've written to, that's now 51% who we've written to have gone on to make a successful claim, and it's an average of £61 a week additional income for them. We're in the early stages of an attendance allowance campaign, and the first set of initial results are 5 successful claims, worth over £21,000 a year to those households. Just this morning, I had some updated figures from attendance allowance, and that's now 11 successful claims worth over £44,000. We've used LIFT to support our families. So we've been promoting the NHS's Healthy Start scheme, School Essentials Grant, and the Childcare Offer for Wales. And we've have been fortunate to have a little bit of publicity linked to that back in September 2024. And we've been recognised by Policy and Practice, who administer the platform, for our innovative approach to the monthly pension credit campaigns. Our Welfare Rights Service have been instrumental in helping residents claim a wide range of benefits, provide tailored advice, and represent at benefit tribunals. As you can see, in 2024-2025, Welfare Rights Service raised over £12 million of additional income for residents. They had a 93% win ratio at appeal hearings and supported over 1,400 people through their advice line. So for 2025-2026, as of middle of January, Welfare Rights have already raised over £9.5 million for residents. We've also used, as I said, LIFT is helping us to support our children, young people and families. So Flying Start and Childcare Offer for Wales, thousands of children have been supported through free childcare provision. Our Food and Fun scheme for summer 2025, it was the largest in Wales. So we had 22 schools taking part. That's over 1,800 places for our children and young people. And in terms of value, that was worth over £600,000.
And what was nice to see is that recently the Neath Talbot's Food and Fun programme was recognised with 6th award at the Welsh Government's 10-year celebratory event. We look at strengthening communities. The council has been able to support local organisations with Welsh Government funding, so our food poverty grant, our warm hub scheme. We've been successful in securing Welsh Government funding to support our Gypsy Roma traveller community. We've had energy efficiency improvements through the EcoFlex scheme. The Neath Talbot Hardship Relief Scheme, as you can see, reached over 3,000 households with over 4,300 interventions. We've been able to support people through employment and as well as our own workforce, something that's really important through mentoring schemes, salary advance and confidential mental health services to help strengthen wellbeing and financial resilience. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victoria. Members, do you have any questions, please? We have a question in the room from Councillor Patterson, and then we come to you, Councillor Percy. So, Councillor Patterson first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Do we have any way of realising how lifting of the 2-child benefit cap will help our residents? Like, some people who used to be struggling might not be in the future. So how are we going to be squaring that?
So that's information specific to Neath Talbot that I'm afraid I don't have in room today. But Citizens Advice Swansea Neath Talbot, they've done some work on that. So perhaps that's something I could follow up on and circulate if that would be of use to members.
I'd just be interested if we could find it. I mean, it's very difficult because it's under the DWP and we're not privy to what their information, but it would be interesting to know how it affects our services and whether or not our services will be needed less. And, so I'd be grateful if there's anything that you could share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Thank you, Victoria. Councillor Percy, please.
Dear David, thank you. Yeah, I mean, no surprise to see the extent of good work that's been carried out in this area, particularly from the welfare rights team. I know members have long supported and advocated for the the benefits that they bring to the county. And of course, we've had the addition now of the LIFT programme as well, haven't we, throughout the SPF funding period. My question is, given the good work that's happening there, we've got 5 members of staff funded by grant funding. What is the current situation around supporting those roles going forward so this work can continue at the same level? Diolch.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. No one's going to respond to that?
Yeah, just Percy, you're absolutely right. The welfare rights team have been pivotal in some of the work that Victoria's alluded to around the pension credit scheme in particular, and we're very acutely aware that today they've been funded by SPF. My understanding is a team they've been funded from one source or another, from one grant or another for nearly 20 years now. And SPF was the latest iteration in how that team were funded. I think that the discussions are ongoing with regards to understanding the local growth fund, what that will and will not fund. That work continues with Lisa Willis and the team. As we look, we know we've extended the funding till the end of June, or the ability to hold on to these posts till the end of June, whilst we make sure we exploit every opportunity there is to find additional funding for these posts, Councillor Percy. I don't have an answer at the moment, but it's certainly something that's very high on our radar, and we don't underestimate the importance our welfare rights team play in helping us address this situation as well. And as the story unfolds, I'm sure we'll keep members informed, Councillor Percy.
Thank you, Noreen. Councillor Percy, do you want to come back in?
I only briefly, just I appreciate some of the specifics around welfare rights. I don't know whether it goes to the Social Services Committee, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure where they sit, but yeah, we'd certainly appreciate being kept abreast of how this works. Obviously, from a budgetary point of view, we've got our budget setting coming up now, haven't we? Very shortly. If it is something we're committed to, then it could potentially be a potential revenue risk for something we might have to dip into, reserves for if we are committed to continuing the service and there's no grant funding available. I can see Hugh reluctantly nodding at me there. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Percy. We have who was just indicated a speaker as well. We've got a speaker in the room, is the leader, and then Councillor Hurley. So if we go to him first.
Yeah,
thank you.
Just in terms of Councillor Percy's point, that's specifically identified as a risk in terms of SPF in the budget report for next week. And you're quite right, if we identify that these posts need to be retained, it'll be a pressure for next year and forthcoming years. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Percy, are you happy with the response?
Yeah, happy. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hurley, can I hold you there a second and bring the leader in, and then we come back to yourself? Thank you.
Go to Hurley. Councillor Hurley first, Chair.
Thank you, leader. Councillor Hurley then, please.
Thanks, Chair. No, it was only a couple of things. I know what work the welfare rights team are doing, but it came up in a meeting with me, I think this week, of how the poverty is affecting, obviously, families with children. And I think one example was a family sharing the bus pass because the cost to get to school if they're inside the limit of the bus transport. So I'm just asking, do we sort of push it through the schools as well, of the opportunities of possibly families who are on borderline getting the additional money through the welfare rights? That was the first question. And then the second question was, it's great to see how much we've benefited from the Eco4. And just as a note as well, is that we were the highest on the tables for installations as a county. So that's a great reflection on how we've used it to obviously lift people's comfort levels and obviously fuel poverty within the homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurley. Lauren or Victoria?
I don't have an answer to Councillor Hurley's first question to hand. I don't think as
specifically to welfare rights going into schools, Councillor Hurley, I'm afraid that's not something I'm aware of. I know they go out into the community, but locally, Citizens Advice Swansea, Neath, Talbot are doing some work in some schools, as you say, getting advice into school settings. There is some initial intelligence that there is a sense of stigma for parents being seen in a school seeking help, and actually potentially that works better in a community where they are in a trusted setting with people that they have a relationship with.
Thank you, Victoria. Councillor Hurley, do you want to come back?
Yeah, in the conversation I had, it almost seemed that the school were aware of perhaps what families were affected, and obviously the help that, well, it was affecting attendance, which is a big thing we're obviously trying to increase, but it was purely down to the how poverty is affecting families. But yeah, I can fully understand the stigma side of it, whether we could even, and again, where parents might not or might be able to get access to it. I know that there's sort of groups that parents are subscribed to, whether they could be sent out as just a general information or something just to make them aware. It might be a secondary thing that they've been contacted directly, but the secondary reminder might make them perhaps come in to us again. Thank you. Thanks for the answer as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hurley. We've got Councillor Neil Jenkins, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reassure Councillor Hurley, the schools have access to family liaison officers, so they do work with families and they do identify any families that are experiencing poverty, and they can signpost them adequately. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Percy, please.
I was going to make the same point as Nia, knowing the good work that the officer does in my local school. So points made. Yeah.
Thank you. Members, any more questions, please? There's nothing in the room, nothing online. So members, I'm going to ask you to note. Oh, that's yes. Sorry, we've gone with the leader. So apologies to the leader.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to address Councillor Percy's point that in a political sense, we got a political commitment to look into retain and support the moving of jobs and finding alternative measures to find the funding to retain the excellent work that all our officers and those that are reliant on the funding mechanisms to do that work. So I'm sure Noelwyn and chief officers and the like, and Hugh looks through Simon Noel as well, cabinet member for finance, are looking at that. But I just want to make another point that you probably would be aware of, is that we're all disappointed in the WLJ, and that's cross-party of the way the UK government have moved the growth fund to CJCs and top slice into Welsh Government, and flipping the 70% revenue and 30% capital as it was to 70% capital and 30% revenue, which has had this impact. And while I think, don't quote me on the numbers, but it's in the 40s is at risk potentially here. It's quite a lot higher right across Wales in many local authorities. We don't believe it was the right way to go, but I think only yesterday we had that announcement now in a cabinet briefing that they were not moving on the delivery of how the new local growth fund will go. So now we have to get on with that work, knowing that it is going to be 70% capital and 30% revenue, and then deliver the programme that they've identified, how they, the UK government, through Welsh Government, have the idea how this should go forward. So further information will come back to members, but I just want to give you assurances politically we are all very much on the same page in trying to make sure it works for Neath Talbot, and I'm sure all members will be involved in those conversations as we go forward to try and deal with it in the best possible way. And I just got huge respect, as already been said by everybody, for the work that our officers are undertaking to try and find solutions. So I just want to pick up on that one point because I think it was important, Jeff. Diolch yn fawr, thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader. There are definitely no more questions in the room. There's none online, so members, again, I'd like you to ask you to note the report. Thank you. So we're on to part 4, which is agenda item 7, which are any urgent items at the discretion of myself, the chair, pursuant to section 100BA 6B of the Local Government Act. I'm pleased to know there are no urgent items today. Can I thank you for members' questions and officers' responses? Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon or officer journey home to those in the room. Thank you all.